How transferable is your career in moving to Australia? Is it even easy finding information about what you do, but in Australia? One of the most secretive professions that I've found about is what to do if you want to be a police officer in Australia. Despite the fact that there are continuous promotions for trying to get people to do the job, whether you live here or not. What does it actually take to transfer over as a police officer in the UK to becoming a police officer here in the land down under? Surely it's pretty similar, right? Well, for our guest today, Nell, that's exactly what she did. And her husband's a copper too, and they even decided to settle in one of my favourite parts of Australia, Perth. What does it take to transfer everything from being a police officer in the UK to Australia? I guess we're going to find out. G'day, Nell, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. How is it in my favourite place in Australia, Perth?
I love Perth. Like, we are so happy here. It's wicked. And the weather this week has been beautiful. So it's heating up now nicely.
Well, actually, at the time of filming this, I've just come off my 7th day of posting what the weather is like on my Instagram.
Yeah.
And we haven't been too bad either. Apparently
No.
there's a bit of a storm coming.
Yeah. No, we've had some like high 20s this week, going into 30s next week. So we're looking forward to it.
Now, can you answer me this question before we start? And it happens every single time. Why do British people feel compelled when they start a conversation to talk about the weather?
Because it's so crap in the UK. It's so rubbish that you get a little bit of sunshine and instantly you just feel better. So it's just the number one thing to talk about.
Absolutely. Okay, Nell, for everyone that is at home or wherever they're listening to us, God forbid you're not in a car because you might fall asleep from my boring voice. Can you paint a picture for everyone? What was your life like before you moved to Australia? What were you perhaps leaving behind? What were you looking to find from your new life here?
So I would say we were just in the rat race. Everything was mundane. It was boring. We were doing the same thing over and over. The weather, it was a big factor, the weather in the move, I think, as well. I've got family here, so that was a big draw for us as well to come over. But we felt like the UK wasn't enough for us, and we knew Australia would be able to offer us more as a family. So that was the big draw to come over. We had 2 young kids who loved to be outdoors, but the weather didn't really work for us as a family to be outdoors that often. So we just had to get out, had to do something different.
Now, yours is then a slightly different situation because most people move here without any family. You know, they're completely doing it on their own. What family do you have in Australia?
So my mum, my stepdad, and my brother and his wife are here, and their 2 children as well. So my parents have been out here for a good 17 years. I've always come back and forward, but because of my profession, it was really difficult to get a visa. I haven't got a trade as such. I'm in quite a unique situation with what I do. So Australia was always on the cards, always on the back burner. But until my employer actively recruited from the UK, we were never going to be able to get a visa to get here. So it was always on the back burner. And we sort of said, if it hadn't happened by the time we were 40, it probably wasn't going to happen. And then luckily in 2022, the government gave the green light to start recruiting police officers from the UK, and that gave us the go ahead to come over.
Okay, so you're a police officer then?
Yeah, police officer by trade. Could be.
I think that's the first copper we've had on here.
Yeah, so we're both police officers as well. So it's but it's good, and it's given us what we need to be able to come over and get that visa. So here we are.
So apart then from obviously the big police recruitment drive, and I remember WA was doing it, Queensland had been doing it as well. Was that the main tipping point for you? Was there anything else that kind of made you think no, now is the time? Because like you said, you wanted to do it before you were 40. It seems to be a thing that lots of people have this age in their head, like we need to do it before then. Sometimes it's linked to visa ages, but other times it's just due to times of life. Were there any other tipping points?
I think it was, we always considered the kids and what future they would have, and so we had always had the conversation that if it ever came up, we would go. There would be no sort of debate about it. It didn't matter what situation we were in the UK at the time. We actually were in a bit of a situation in that we had just bought a house that needed a complete renovation the month before they started recruiting. So then we were like, right, this renovation needs to happen ASAP. We need to get through this so that we can get on the plane and get to Australia.
Why wouldn't you just leave the house as it
Oh, if
was?
you saw the state of this house. So we bought the forever home, the UK forever home. That was it because we thought, oh, Australia's not going to happen. So we bought the home. It was a 1960s detached house that hadn't been touched since the 1960s. So there was no way we could have sold it in the state that we bought it. We would have probably lost loads of money just putting it back on the market and selling it because the market was just on that turn in 2022. So we made the decision that we had to renovate it to be able to claw a bit of money back and also like give us a little pot to be able to come to Australia with.
Sure.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess then, as our first police officer on the podcast, and for anyone else that's thinking to themselves, because I guess I was in a similar situation as a teacher. I guess it's one of those types of professions that you really don't do it for the money, and teaching, probably like policing, was getting more and more difficult, more and more bureaucratic, and you just kind of started to lose the love for the job. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to Australia, because I thought, well, it always helps getting paid a little bit more. It helps with the work-life balance and things like that. For anyone else that's listening that thinks to themselves, you know, I'm a police officer, are they still having a recruitment drive to have us over here? What was your migration journey like? What hurdles did you have to jump through? What do you have to do to be a police officer in Australia?
So if anyone that is a police officer and has been for a couple of years, well, no matter what your experience is, there's a saying that the job is the job, and you can be a police officer anywhere in the world. There'll just be different processes or different computer systems. And the main basis of being a police officer is that you can communicate and you can speak to people. So if you've got that and you can do it, then you can stick an application in pretty much anywhere. So I know most of the states are now recruiting. Waypol, who we're with, they're well into I think they were doing a 5-year campaign at the time. They're at least halfway through it now because it started in 2022. And a lot of them are offering different incentives as well. So I think their salaries are slightly different across the states, and some states are offering a cash incentive to go. And reimbursements for visas, etc. But it's a case of, it's like with anything, you put an application in, you do an interview in relation to your experience and your service and why you want to go. And for us, the big thing was, you know, the job is the same anywhere across the world, but it was the quality of life we were going to have as a family on our days off in Australia that the UK just couldn't match anymore. And yeah, the wages are better as well, which is always a bonus. There's a slightly different pension option here to what we have in the UK, so which makes us financially a bit better off because the employer pay it compared to in the UK where we have to make the contribution. Yeah. So there's these little, you know, big little things that make a big difference in making your decision to, can I do it? I get a lot of people messaging me across my socials asking me, you know, they're just like, how do you do it? Why? How do you know you can make the move? And how is it now you're there? Would you come back? And I could never go back to the UK now. Not now we're here, you know. So
are there any strange differences as a police officer? Because I guess for people that don't know, police officers are armed in Australia, and that's something that unless you're specially trained, they don't give you those.
Yeah, it's a difference. Because I wasn't armed in the UK. So but you get all the training. All the training you get is brilliant. The instructors are, you know, are top notch. And you're guided through everything. You get the right support that you need. And it's just another tool on your belt at the end of the day. You kit up every day and you go out and hope that you don't have to use it.
How long does the additional training I guess take to get you skilled up from a UK police officer to an Australian one?
So in the UK, everyone will have already done their relevant training through their police colleges. And then when you come to Australia, you do a 13-week conversion course. So that's what we did, 13 weeks, compared to what would be a 6-month course if you were a standard recruit starting from day zero. So yeah, so it wasn't too bad. It's just going over, you know, refreshing your law and your legislation, your different policies here compared to the UK. But it's largely based the same. Yeah.
What were your first impressions like then when you first came to Australia, either as a police officer or, you know, as a young family?
When you step off the plane at Perth Airport, I don't know what it is, but it's just amazing. Like, just even the weather changes, the air feels cleaner, like there's more space. You just notice straight away the sense of space when you get to Australia, which was a big thing for me in the UK. I was starting to feel quite claustrophobic in a way, like they just felt like there was no space around, there was loads of people. It's the same old things that people are always like moaning about, so, you know, like you can't get a doctor's appointment and all this sort of stuff. But when you get to Australia, you just notice like a massive shift in your mood, how things are done here. Everyone's so laid back and relaxed and friendly as well. People are friendly. People actually talk to you here that you don't necessarily get in the UK when you walk down the street. People are happy to say hello, you know, and it's you know, there's more of a feeling of like community here, I think, that we didn't have back in the UK.
Is there any experience at all that made you feel kind of at home here? Like, it sounds like you've been here for a while. You're not fresh off the boat, if you like. Is there anything that's made you feel particularly Australian, or vice versa? You know, made you not think that?
To be honest, for anyone that comes to Perth, one of the big things you'll notice is that everyone's British. No matter where you go, in a shopping centre or if you're in the hairdresser, wherever you are, you will hear in the background a British accent somewhere. And it just makes you realise that actually it almost feels like you're on holiday a little bit. You know, when you go on holiday and you just hear loads of Brits in the resort, it kind of feels like that sometimes. But you're never made to feel like an outsider. Everyone's really welcoming. And I think it goes back to before about there is a big sense of community and people are really welcoming here. There's no like, you know, more people coming in off the plane and stuff like that. I think everyone's sort of happy to have, because I think the visa system here as well is very stringent. So if you've been given a visa to get in, it's because you're able to give something back to the economy and to society. And so, you know, there's no draining off the government here that there might be in the UK. And I think people are appreciative of that. So everyone's like, yeah, pretty happy.
What visa did you get from transferring over into the police?
We were pretty lucky. We got a 186 visa with immediate permanent residency, which was a massive tick in the box as well. You know, a lot of people, I think, come over on temporary visa, and there can be some drawbacks to that because there are things that you're not entitled to on the temporary visas that you would be if you were given permanent residency straight away. So for us, when we started looking into what that meant to get PR, you know, your entitlement to childcare subsidy, which is massive here compared to the UK, another big bonus. You get a higher give back here than you did in the UK. So that was a big thing for us, knowing that the kids could go into daycare and it wasn't going to cost us an arm and a leg. You know, there's the Medicare system similar to NHS. So there's all these different things that you're entitled to on a permanent residency visa, that we can buy a house as well, which is another big thing, which enables you to settle. If you come on a temporary visa, I think.
And I guess if you'd moved over from the UK, having been at already that stage of your life where you just bought your forever home, and then having to come here and, you know, sorry mate, we've got to put all that on hold for a minute because you've got to do a few years until you qualify as a permanent resident. That's part, I think, sometimes of the visa process that is the tricky part in the waiting for the visa, however long it takes you, even if it's kind of a reasonably short time. It's that mental process of feeling like you have to put your life on hold. And if you've been the type of person that's been fortunate enough never to really have to wait for stuff, that can sometimes be quite confronting for people who kind of, if anything, sometimes I think that's the worst part.
I think a big thing to factor into the move as well is the financial position that it puts you in, and that is the difference between the two visas on a temporary and a permanent, is it costs a lot of money to move to Australia, and there's sort of no flowering it up to make it sound like it doesn't. You hemorrhage money from the minute you get here because you're starting your life again, and most people would have been in a position that they would have sold a house or they've got some savings, and you try and budget that, and you think, you know, I'm just going to buy like for like when I get there. You know, I've sold this and I'll just buy it for the same price. But, you know, some things are higher in cost here and some things are lower. But to get yourself settled again, you know, a bond on a rental or to pay your deposit for your new house, there's a big financial sacrifice to move into Australia. And I think I was probably a little bit naive in understanding that when I was planning to come over and we were planning to come over. And it's been something that's really sort of hit home in the last couple of months since we got here, when we're like, okay, wow, this is actually cost a lot of money.
How much do you reckon you've spent in total?
Like, it's a lot. You know, you're in the tens of thousands. This isn't like, it's expensive. You're looking at 40 to 50 grand to get yourself, you know, once you've paid for your visas, your flights, your bonds, to get your rental, all the other things. Like, it just feels like there's always something to pay for constantly. And, you know, some places or some companies will, you know, you get salary sacrifice so you can claim back your relocation costs. And there are options to do that. So it sounds like a lot of money on initial outlay, but some of it you might be able to recoup later down the line as well. And like, we were fortunate, we don't have any pets, but I know there's people that will pay 7,000 or £7,000 or £8,000 to bring their dogs over, you know, and we're fortunate that we didn't have that to factor in, but it's expensive.
One of the things that I try to help people think about when they're thinking about the cost to move here is treat it a bit like an investment.
Yeah.
So for most people, not everyone, but for most people, if you're going to move here and you're going to stay in the career that you were in, you're probably going to experience a bit of a wage increase. And if you think about it like, so if I spend X amount, £40,000 to move here, how much extra am I likely to be paid in the career that I'm in? And then,
Yeah.
you know, assuming that I'm probably going to do that for the rest of my working life there, how much extra in theory would I earn? So it's a little bit like I've got to pay this money to be able to earn a bit more money, but then I'm going to
Absolutely.
have all of the other benefits associated with the work-life balance, the different styles of job. I mean, I don't know about you, but I find as a teacher, the outside bit is obviously a great benefit, but actually being a teacher here, I think is easier. There's less bureaucracy that there seems to be in the UK. It feels a bit nicer just being able to kind of teach sometimes rather than having to do certain things. Don't get me wrong, it slowly is creeping in more and more so, but I think it's not at the stressful stage that it was. How's it like in policing?
Yeah, so pretty similar. I would say the crime is lower here. There isn't, although it might feel different to the people that live here from a UK experience, there isn't as much crime here, or there isn't as much serious crime here as what we would deal with in the UK, which is, you know, another benefit. That's why we came here. You know, youth crime and youth violence was becoming massive in the UK, and I just thought I can't bring my kids up around this, you know, and that was another big factor for bringing them over. So I would say there's a lot less crime here in general, and I do think our job is easier here, which is a good thing, and we do get paid more. So I know I made it sound like a horror story moving over and how much it costs, but just like you said, it is an investment, and we've given ourselves 2 years. We've said, well, in 2 years we'll be back on top, you know, where we were before. It's just going to take a little bit of hard work to, you know, start the savings pot again, or, you know, and just to have like a bit more of a disposable income, if you like. But we will earn more, and with that, you know, we can take promotion. There'll be chances for overtime. So there's all these different things that you can take into account to sort of realise that in the short term it can be quite difficult, but when you push through in the future, it will be the best thing you ever did. And we're already confident that we know that's the best thing for us.
Again, talking about the policing, then how has the move impacted your kind of professional career growth? I mean, have you had to take a step back at all, or are you on the same level? Have you moved up a level? How's that one
Yeah,
had to work?
so technically we both did take a demotion to come over. But we've been out of, you know, training now, if you like, for almost 3 months. And where we are now, although we're not on the same rank we were before, we're being paid more than we were in that rank in the UK. So just on that basis, we're already better off, and we haven't even taken that next step of promotion yet. So we'd already factored those figures though, because that's all available online, and we could see like what our projected wages would be if we were at this rank or this rank. So for us, we could see straight away that once we'd done a few months and were able to come out of that sort of probationary period, we knew that we'd be sort of earning a decent wage again, with the option to earn more in the future, like similar to yourself, like you said.
Did they
Yeah.
take any of your previous experience into consideration? Because I know as a teacher, one of the things I had to get for my visa was what they call statements of service from previous schools. So although, I mean, I guess I was middle management, I was a head of department, I didn't move into a head of department role, but I was kind of bumped to the top of the teaching pay scale because I'd done 10 years in the UK. Is anything like that recognised in policing, or is it purely done on rank?
For the state that we're in specifically, they'll recognise up to 9 years service, which for me was fine because I just sort of tipped into that ninth year at the point of applying. So I was quite fortunate that I knew that the pay scale I'd get to anyway. But there are people who have joined with me who have got 18, 19, 20 years service, you know, so they're sort of only still being recognised up to level 9, but then they can, which is fine because that's still quite a good rank within that structure. And then once you're sort of in and you've learnt the new processes and you can get your head around the systems, you can draw on that previous experience, then sort of say, look, you know, I think I'll then look to take that promotion or that promotion, or I'll look to start branching out and see what I can do to further my experience again within this agency, drawing on the previous experience I had before. So and that was a big thing of why they're taking on UK cops, because we come with a lot of experience and we can bring that with us and sort of integrate that into the agency here. So it's definitely welcomed, all the experience and knowledge that we've got.
Awesome. Now,
Yeah.
you talked before about Perth being very British, and that being a good thing, as well as, perhaps not being able to meet so many Australians. And I guess it's different for you moving over here and having quite a large family base. But how did you go about building, a new social circle, new friends? Because family's one thing, but if you're having to
Hmm.
leave all of your friends and you start there, life can be very lonely.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it did get to a point where both my husband and I sort of looked at each other and said, we've got each other, we've got the kids, and we go out with my family, but sometimes you just want to go out and have, conversation with the girls, drink with the girls, or a drink with the lads. So I actually used my socials to branch out to anyone who was following at the time, but I knew that a lot of people would follow me who were on the same journey. And I think I'd actually put a post up about the fact that I hadn't really made much of an effort to meet people once I got here because I was so focused on settling the kids and
Hmm.
making sure they were in daycare, and we were going through the training, and actually that was quite intensive. And so we probably didn't really have time to sort of like do anything on a weekend anyway when it came to it. And loads of people said, "Oh my God, I'm in the same position. I haven't made any effort with anybody since I've got here." So I thought, right, what can I do? So I put a post out and I said, anyone that wants to meet up on this day at this park, like bring the kids if you want to bring the kids. If you don't, there's still a coffee shop and we can grab a coffee. Let's all meet up because we're all in the same boat, and like let's get each other's numbers and see, like, let's hang out. And I did it, and loads of girls came down, and it was actually really good. And from that, we've now
Awesome.
got like a WhatsApp group, and we're like trying to arrange like bottomless brunch and other stuff like that. And we've all got kids, some are the same age, some are a bit older. So it just gives people that opportunity to branch out then if they've met someone that's more their cup of tea. But it was really positive because I don't, even though, I do what I do for a living, and I would say that I'm quite confident when I'm at work, to put myself out of my comfort zone like that and meet a group of strangers, essentially, there was no other choice because we've got to make friends again, and we have got to build that social circle because that is going to make this the best experience it can be. And because I think if you feel lonely, that's when, like, those little voices in the back of your mind start saying, "Oh, do we need to
Yeah.
go back? Have we done the right thing?" And it's, you've got to make yourself feel as settled as you can here to be able to know that you've made it work, and it's the right move.
I think you're one of the first people that's been able to quite effectively describe how to sometimes use social media quite effectively to meet friends. Because I
Mm,
guess from when I moved here, you meet maybe some friends through work or through any kind of sporting things, and that's
yeah.
that's usually the typical advice that people
Hmm.
say. And then when it comes to social media, you kind of think to yourself, well, how? Like,
I
from a
know.
social media perspective, like that's how me and my wife met. We met on what was it, Match.com,
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, 15 years ago when it
Yeah,
first came out.
yeah.
I think I should have took out shares. But I think she was the first one I met. Like, that was it. It works pretty well.
Yeah,
But
that's
then when it
good.
comes to meeting friends, it's a bit like, well, how does this work? Like, is there a
Yeah,
friend kind of
I
app? Or
know.
they've probably turned a bit seedy now, really, haven't they? They've
Yeah,
just been turned
yeah,
into other ways that you can meet
yeah.
partners. But I guess it's exactly the same thing in the sense that you just got to put yourself out there to go and meet people.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to be vulnerable
You do.
on social media, and hey,
Yeah.
it might not work in it, but if it doesn't work, you're kind of going to be in the same boat, really. So it's
Nothing's
great
going to
to hear
change.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are always people in the same boat as you. That,
Hmm.
and if that is the reason for your connection, then that's where it can start, and you never know where it's going to go. It sounds
Yeah.
like it's probably going to go flourishing when you go on a bottomless brunch and you
Yeah,
realise,
I know. It'll be great. Yeah. No, and like,
what's that? You
I'm a
like an Aperol spritz as well? Yeah, wonderful.
yeah, I know. Like, yeah, we can be best friends. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's good. And when I did it at the time, I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, I'm not due to come over till September or October. So can you do another one?" So it's like I do probably need to like do another one so there can be, the more people you can have in your network, the better. Because I think it is a big deal to move over here, and I think it's a massive factor for people that they're like, "How am I going to make friends again?" Because the friends you tend to have as an adult in like your 30s are the ones you've had since you were like
Yeah.
20 or like even younger. And so to then start again is massive. Yeah.
Yeah, not to poo poo any of the friends that we've left, but
No,
sorry,
I
you're not here anymore, mate. We need some
know.
new ones.
I
We need to
know.
try
It's
and
sad.
replace you. Well, I guess then for anyone who is also in Perth and is thinking, do you know what, Nell sounds really cool, and I'd love to go on one of these bottomless brunches. I'll link your social in the description. Go and have a
Definitely reach
look.
out. Yeah.
You're probably going to have to come up with a better name than Nell's Meetups. You know, you're
Yeah, I
welcome. There you go.
know. Yeah,
But
yeah,
if it's going to become a more regular thing, hopefully you're not
yeah.
going to get oversubscribed and run out of spaces for friends. But hey, you just might go along for the coffee and the chat.
Yeah, it's good. And that was it. Like, it didn't matter how many people turned up because in life, we're not everyone's cup of tea, but it was about if somebody could meet someone that was their person or that they
Mm,
had, they had a connection with, and then they could branch off and meet up, or their kids were a bit older, so they had more in common. Like, that's
yeah.
what it was about. It wasn't necessarily about me making loads of friends as well. It was about everyone being in the same position and being able to like have that in common and try and just make a meaningful connection, I think, because it
Awesome.
is hard.
So, other than the potential threat then of not meeting people and not
Mm.
having many friends, has there been any other moments where you've questioned your decision to make the move?
I don't think we've necessarily questioned our decision. I think something that has weighed on us quite heavily was our naivety in selling the house and thinking it'd be really easy.
Okay.
Because from our perspective, we did build this forever home and the house is beautiful. Everything in it now is brand new, but the timing was just off because the market had started that downturn. We'd sort of put this money into the house and got it back on the market, and we were getting all these viewings, but it just didn't happen. It just wasn't, it did sell, and then the chain broke, and it's one of the chain of events. Then from there, like the mortgage ran out, and of course the interest rates have gone up since we bought it. So there's all these factors at play that have made it quite stressful. And because in our mind we thought the house will sell, we'll get the equity, we'll buy our new house, we'll settle in Australia, and unfortunately, it just hasn't quite happened as fluidly for us as we would have liked. So we've gone plan B. We've got a tenant in. We're going to rent the house for a year. We'll try again in a year's time to put the house on the market. And in the meantime, we've got a really lovely little rental that we're actually really happy with, and everything's worked out in the end. But I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, when do I put my house on the market? Do I wait for the visa? Do I wait for this?" And from my experience, I don't know if I've had quite a bitter experience from it, but I would say like get the house on the market as soon as possible, because
Mm.
unless you have got a plan B, that if you can't draw that equity out of the house and you can still manage and survive out here once you get here, then go for it. But it would definitely be sell the house, and if you have to move in with family for a couple of months until you get on the plane, then that's definitely going to be the easier option
Yeah, that's what
than
we did.
trying to manage estate agents and tenants and everything else from like the other side of the world. It's been a bit
Yeah.
of a nightmare, but
I mean, you can do it all digitally and
of
stuff
course you
now, but
can.
it's not the same. It really
It's not
isn't
the
the same.
same, and it adds a lot of weight and stress
Mm.
that you probably don't need, because you want to be excited for the move that you've just made. You want to,
Yeah.
and you're trying to sell everyone else the dream that you've done it. You're like, yeah, we've made this move and everything's great. And in the bigger picture, everything is great, but that little thing in the back of your mind where you're like, oh, we'd planned for the money for this, we'd planned for the money for that, and it just hasn't come off. And
Just one of those things that, they're one of those loops that you haven't quite closed yet,
yeah.
and you need to close off all the British
Hmm.
loops or
Yeah.
wherever that home was,
Yeah.
so that you can now really call this your
Yeah,
new home.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I see a lot of people say, oh, we want to rent our house out in case we go back. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with the mindset of in case we need to go back, because then I don't think you're fully committing to the move.
Yeah.
And if you don't fully commit to it, I don't know that it would work 100%,
No, I agree.
Or, yeah. So, yeah, for us, we didn't want any ties. My husband's family live there and they're coming out next month, which we're really excited about. So, we have got the family there still, but we didn't want the house ultimately, because we knew we wouldn't come back.
I think also, I get it. For some people, this really doesn't work out, and they
Hmm.
want to go back to the
Hmm.
UK or wherever, and that's fine. Everyone to their own. You got
Yeah.
to do some seeking to find out what really is important to you. But I
Hmm.
think if you've done all of the hard work in being able to move here, like you physically got to Australia
Yeah.
and you found somewhere to live. If the worst case scenario is then you have to move back, like you've already done it one way, mate.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
if anything, you're moving now back to where everything is familiar. You know how all the processes work.
Hmm.
You know people perhaps, or at least, yeah, you definitely know people because you were in places. Just move back
Yeah.
to not maybe the same house, but the same area. It can
Yeah.
be done. You've done the hard one. Going back, you don't need to, oh, what happens if, well,
I
it
know.
shouldn't
I
be that much
know.
of a problem, mate.
No.
Yeah, no.
No.
Now, you talked about the financial implications then of the difficulties if you've got equity in a house and you don't
Hmm.
end up really selling it. What have the financial realities been like then for moving to Australia for you? Because cost of living
Hmm.
is a major thing here at the moment. I mean, I'm out of the UK for 4 years that we've been here now, so sometimes I think to myself, the cost of things in the UK, I don't really know anymore. Lots have changed. I still perv on the cost of the house that we sold because I can look it up on
Yeah. Yeah.
Zoopla,
Yeah.
but that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't go to Aldi, I don't go to Asda, I don't go to Tesco. I don't really know the cost of things anymore. How have you found that moving here?
So this is a big one that people talk about because you always see people say, "Oh, the cost of living is so much more expensive in Australia." But I find that those people are the people that visited like 10, 15 years ago, which was the case, and that was true. From
Well, you've got
our
17 years of experience and
yeah,
going backwards and forwards.
yeah,
You're the perfect person to ask.
so I would say some things are more expensive, some things are a lot cheaper. So fuel, for example, is the big one straight away. I think when I left the UK, it was sitting at about, I don't know, £1.60 a litre. We pay about $1.50 a litre. So half that, you're talking about 75, 80p for a litre of fuel. Hasn't been that in the UK for a very long time.
I think it was just under that when I first started driving.
Yeah, yeah, just wild. So like that straight away when you can suddenly fill your car for like £30,
Yeah.
you just yeah, that's like mind blowing every time we do it. We can fill up. So I would say I do my food shop online like I did in the UK, and like for like, I'm spending the same,
Hmm.
which is actually quite interesting. And rent is probably a little bit more expensive here. Okay, so then you are balancing out, like say your rent's more expensive, but then you're saving on your fuel. And I would say your gas and electric's a lot cheaper here as well.
With that though, rent being more expensive, I've had this discussion with people before. Yeah, I agree, rent is more expensive, but
Mm,
then what you are renting, is
true.
it bigger or is it smaller? Because Australian houses are much bigger, aren't they?
Hmm.
My first flat in the UK was 64 square meters, and to
Okay,
say
yeah.
that to some people here, they're like, "What?"
Yeah, I
You
know.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one, isn't it?
It is difficult, yeah, because something that might like shock people that come over if they haven't been to Australia before, particularly in Perth, and it's not everywhere, but the layout of the houses. So single story houses are really popular, and it's all about open plan family living, which is great because that's how we'd sort of redesigned our new house in the UK. We sort of based it off of a lot of Australian houses we'd looked at. So you come over, and double story isn't like super popular here,
No.
and that you still can do it. Everyone builds it still, but on the whole, if you go onto a new build estate now, they're generally all single story, and they're all 4 bedrooms by 2 bathrooms generally, with a big like open plan kitchen and a theatre room. So yeah, you are getting probably a lot more house for your money because this is like sort of standard sizing here, unless people are like building bigger. But yeah, no, they're good, and I think it will be a nice surprise for a lot of people to be able to sort of like embrace this like way of living here as well.
Well, if you're looking to move to Australia, or you've just started thinking about moving to Australia and you don't know where to start, then the first step is to find out if you even qualify for a visa. Contrary to what most people believe, Australia isn't just one of those countries that lets anyone live here. And when we made the move more than 3.5 years ago, it was one of the hardest things we've ever done. To help you out and to plan exactly what you need to do next, speak to the sponsors of our podcast, True Blue Migration Services. And when you mention us, let them do the hard work for you in overcoming the ever-changing Australian visa system. And you get to use their free visa assessment so they can tell you exactly what you need to do to live your best life down under. They are the only MARA registered visa agency that we trust. And if you don't believe us, you can bore yourself by looking at the hundreds of positive Google reviews, but I wouldn't really recommend it unless you need help falling asleep. If we didn't use a visa agent, we'd still be stuck navigating the minefield of all the different forms and processes, and I probably would have never made the move over here and ended up being one of those people that applied for a visa to Australia and had it rejected. So speak to them today and you could be one step closer to living your best life. What's your weird thing that you find stupidly expensive in Australia? Like you just don't understand, why is it that expensive?
I would say, do you know what? Like fruit and veg is pretty expensive. I know that's like really boring, but when you've got two toddlers who inhale blueberries and raspberries at $10 a punnet in
Yeah,
30 seconds, that can like add up quite quickly, you
yeah.
know. So yeah, so fresh fruit and veg, but then I do feel actually like the quality of the food is probably a bit better here. So like even though those things seem a little bit more expensive, you get what you pay for. I don't know, like I can't really think off the top of my head, like what do you normally find is really expensive?
I had the same thought when mine's fruit and veg
Yeah.
related, but mine's
Yeah.
quite specific.
Oh.
Mine's mushrooms.
Okay, I am not a mushroom fan, so I haven't been able to
Oh, well, there you
experience
go.
that.
Yeah, no, no, yeah. I guess it's not quite a
Yeah.
Marmite or Vegemite type of thing, but
Mm,
I always remember you could buy like a pack of mushrooms for less than a quid,
yeah.
or a quid in the UK, and here you pick that up and you're like, how is this $7? Or
Yeah.
that it's more expensive than meat sometimes. You look
Yeah.
at them,
Yeah.
and
Some
also I
stuff.
kind of think to myself, don't they grow like mushrooms in buckets? Like it's not really a seasonal thing. You can
No.
do you see
Get
these
it
things on
whenever.
YouTube of people doing them in cupboards and stuff. It's not like
Yeah.
I saw one once. It was snow peas, and they were $37 a kilo. I
That's
just looked
pretty
at them and I was like,
expensive.
looks like I'm never eating snow peas again.
Ever
Like,
again. Yeah, grapes got like that. When they got up to like $20 a kilo, I was
yeah,
like, the kids will never eat grapes again then. Yeah, like
yeah. I think we were
some
spoilt in
stuff.
the UK with
Mm.
the lack of seasonality of
Yeah.
particularly fruit and veg.
Yeah.
You noticed it with meat. Especially coming around Christmas time, you'd
Mm.
notice that like pork, it was just
Yeah.
used to get really really cheap.
Yeah.
But you never really noticed these wild fluctuations of
No.
expensiveness. Like
No.
snow peas, a
Yeah.
vegetable for $37 a kilo.
Yeah.
You're like, who's buying this?
Yeah. So you
You
just
just
kind of
stop
like,
supplying it, wouldn't you?
yeah, you just like you shop like week on week. You just shop a bit like it's not seasonal, but you shop sort of like, oh, this week, okay, yeah, we're not having blueberries this week then, but
Yeah,
like then next week they've gone back down again.
yeah.
So yeah, you just like alternate through, which is actually when you've got young kids is better anyway because they just get
Otherwise,
bored
they
of
just
it.
end up eating
So
blueberries all the time.
yeah, exactly. So you have to switch it up,
You
but
show them
no.
old Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, like, look what happens to the
Yeah.
pigs when they eat too much. That'll
Yeah.
happen to
You
you.
turn into one. Yeah. So no.
What's been your biggest surprise about living here?
How different I felt almost immediately in terms of like my mood, my outlook. I mean, coming from the UK, whether it was like the season that we were in at home, like I'd just been on maternity leave, so I was at home a lot with both the kids. The weather was absolutely rubbish. I couldn't go out with them as much as I wanted to, and I had, all these plans to be able to take them outside and do all these things. And then suddenly we get off the plane here, and we're just going to the park every day. And I haven't got to look at the weather app before I go. I can just
Mm.
walk out the door and I can just go. I can take a picnic. I haven't got to pack wellies and like loads of layers and coats and stuff. We can just get in the car and go out, even if it's a 10-minute drive to the beach. I could pick them up after school, after kindy, and take them to the beach, and we can eat fish and chips on the beach for dinner. Like, there might be a place in the UK that you can do that, obviously, but here that just wasn't possible for us back in the UK. And I just feel like we're spending so much better quality time together as a family since we've been here, and that was everything that we wanted. And I feel so much happier. So I don't know whether I was actually quite affected by the seasons at home. Looking back now, I think, oh, maybe I was
Yeah.
just really affected by the grey and the rain constantly.
Mm. You wouldn't be the first person I've spoken to that's like
Yeah.
feels like that. Yeah.
And I think maybe sometimes when you're in it and you're just living it day in, day out, you don't realize the impact that it has until you
Mm.
come somewhere different and you're like, okay, we can really live like this. This is how we were supposed to live. This is what we're supposed to be like as a family. And
Mm.
and that was the biggest thing for us. And that's why like anyone that messages me asking me like how are the kids settling? Like what do you do? How do you manage? I'm like, it'll just be the best thing that you can do. If you're an outdoorsy type of family or you just don't want to be stuck indoors all the time, you just want to see like I love seeing the ocean. Like we live 5-10 minutes from the beach. I went for a walk this morning and I thought to myself like I really hope this view never gets old because it's just incredible. Like it's such a beautiful part of the world, and now I feel so grateful that we're here and we're able to live it every day.
I don't think the natural views ever really get old. I
No, I
mean,
hope not.
I'm 4 years here, and no, some of the pretty natural things I can't say that they get old at all.
No.
The stuff that's, you know, all built up and artificially created, yeah, sure.
Hmm.
That just, I don't think it gets boring, but you just, you know, when you see something, you're like, oh, that's cool, that's
Yeah.
new, but then it
Yeah.
just fades quite
You just get
quickly.
used to
The
it.
nature
Yeah.
stuff, no. And
Yeah.
the colors in the
Yeah.
sky, like
It's
every
just
time there's a
beautiful.
sunset, you're like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
I feel like a child.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. And then I think, oh my God, this is incredible that I've now managed to give the kids this, you know, that
Yeah.
this is their childhood is now going to be growing up on the beach or, you know, and I think it's like just perfect. It's everything that we really wanted. So we're really
Not growing up in
grateful.
front of a screen.
Yeah, because we were falling into that habit a little bit with the kids, and it's probably not the best. So if they can be little outdoors and like the sports here, I really wanted them to be big into sports as well. So that was a big thing. There's quite an outdoor culture here, and there's the green spaces and the parks that they build for the kids as
Yeah.
well. There's just parks everywhere and
And
climbing
good
frames. It's
ones.
just really good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good ones. So yeah, no, it's really good.
Well, it
It's
sounds like you've
definitely.
got a few ideas for how you want your kids to grow up, but how has moving to Australia kind of changed you as a person, or changed your husband as a person?
I think it's just we come back around to that. I think we're just both happier.
Yeah.
I think we probably have a little bit more patience because life is more laid back here. So we don't have to rush anywhere. You know, we everything's quite close as well. It's works out quite well where we are, the suburb where we live, the suburb where the kids go to kindy. Everything's like quite nearby, so we've got everything we need, like in this little pocket. And my parents are down the road as well, so like it's great for us. And I think we've just slotted into this little rhythm now of life where we're like, yeah, we go to work, the kids go to daycare, but on our days off, we make sure that we, you know, plan something that we can get out, even if it is something as simple as taking a picnic down to the beach or finding a new park to go to because there's always a new one to go to every
Yeah.
week. So, and I think in turn, we've probably come together a bit better as a family, you know, like, and that's exactly what we came here for, to slow down as well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the whole going to new parks thing. Like
Yeah.
that's something I would have never done in the UK.
No. Oh,
And
no.
I swear my eldest Aurora, she thinks there's like a never one day there's not going to be there's not
Oh,
going to be
no.
a new
Yeah.
park.
You will have done
She
them all
thinks, yeah,
eventually.
she thinks there's like this never-ending
Yeah.
supply of parks that we can go
Yeah.
to. And every time I
Yeah.
say, "Oh, we're going to go to a new park this weekend," a new park. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think she's even sussed as well that, you know, it gets a little bit further out every single
Yeah.
time. You know, I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe she's getting a bit older. She's getting a bit better at
Yeah.
traveling. But yeah, sometimes even you just go to the old faithfuls. You find the ones that are
Yeah.
close to you, and just
Yeah.
to see their face. But,
And a lot of them have always got a good coffee place near them as well, which is always a bonus because the coffee in Australia as well. Oh my God,
even
that's
if it's
something
just a
else to
coffee
talk
van.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
there. We went
Yeah.
to a new dog beach the other weekend, and straight away as soon as we pulled up, I was regretting as we were coming towards the beach. Oh, I should have at least just dropped into a 7-Eleven to grab a coffee from there. But as
Yeah.
we pulled into the car park, there was
Yeah.
a geezer there with his coffee van. I was like,
Yeah, they
yes,
just know it's
saved.
just set up for it, like, you know. And also like the days start so much earlier in Australia, you
Yeah.
know. Your days are starting at 7 a.m. here. You know, the kids are up at the crack of dawn and you just know that wherever you go, something will be open.
Yeah.
The coffee shop will be open from 6:30, the coffee van will be down at the park. So, you know, if the kids are up early and they're driving you mad, you can just jump in the car and go.
Yeah.
Like it's great. You don't have to wait for anything to open here like you do back in the UK. It's just set up for that sort of like early living, and you know you get up earlier, but then you go to bed a bit earlier as well here. I find
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it gets darker so much quicker. There's
Yeah.
no late evenings here, which is a
No.
little
Well,
something
I
to
think if
adjust to.
you're in some of the more southern states, that's why they have
Oh,
daylight
okay.
savings and things like that for
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, daylight
Melbourne
saving over
and
there.
yeah, but not
Yeah,
here. It's 6,
not
7
in
o'clock. It's
WA.
dark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there anything you miss? What do
I
you
do miss my
really miss?
friends. I really miss my friends. Yeah, I think that's been difficult. But you have to make a decision for you, don't you? And for your future. And the friends you've got, you'll always stay in contact with. And, you know, we're already planning to go back to the UK next year. So we're already linking in, and I already know that I can meet up with them when we get there. Because one of my best friends has already moved to Dubai like a couple of years ago.
Oh,
So
okay.
we've already done that long distance thing anyway. So we're just adding another one into it. But,
Well, she'll be happy that she's now got someone to go and visit in Australia, I guess.
exactly. That's what you do. You just add in another holiday destination onto your friends list.
Just
So
got to encourage all of the other friends, like, oh, where are you going to go and
I'm
move to?
always trying to sell. I'm literally saying to my friends all the time, I'm like, "Do you sure you don't just want to move to Australia? Because it is pretty good."
Or
But yeah,
like Thailand. I fancy having someone going, some cheap
Thailand.
accommodation in Thailand or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
just spread them around the world.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the more friends you can have around, the better holidays you get. But
What plans then do you have for the future?
so, we do have a little plan, like sort of building in the background at the minute, and that is we are debating whether we go and work in regional WA for a little bit.
Okay.
Because we found with WA specifically, you know, you can get really drawn into Perth and, you know, sort of the immediate surrounding suburbs. But WA is massive and there are some really beautiful parts up north and down south. And we kind of just don't want to get stuck in this little bubble that we never leave Perth. So while the kids are so young and before they start school, we sort of think maybe we could take a couple of years up north, and see what, you know, the other towns have got to offer. A
Is
bit of
there anywhere in
regional.
particular that tickles your fancy?
We like the idea of Karratha at the minute, like a mining town. So it's not totally remote. We couldn't go totally remote with the kids, but it's just a bit smaller. But I think there's a few things going on there. I've seen that it's
How
got a
many
netball
people live
team.
there?
I think it's about 1,500, maybe
Still
more. I
pretty
don't know.
small though, isn't
It's
it?
pretty small. But yeah, obviously you've got mining's a massive thing in Australia. So a lot of
You'd have
FIFO
the
workers.
infrastructure there, though, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because, you know, even though the FIFO workers are temporary, at some point there's going to be still loads of them there. They have their own little,
Yeah.
it's like a city within a city kind of
Yeah, I
thing
think that's
sometimes.
it. Yeah, yeah. Oh, my husband's just texted me to say it's 13,000. I got it wrong.
Oh, he's listening in.
13,000 people.
Well, that's quite a lot. We
It's a
used
bit
to live
bad.
in Tadley. So when people say where did you live in the UK, I say Reading, but technically it was we moved out of Reading because we couldn't afford a house there, and we could buy a house in Tadley, and that was maybe like 10,000 people.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't far. You know, I reckon in Karratha it would be, you know, how many hours do you have to drive to be able to see
This is
another big
it.
place?
Yeah.
But yeah, you can still get enough things with
Yeah.
13,000 people. 1,300 or 1,500, yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
small. But
That
yeah,
was pretty
get over
small.
10,000.
Got that
That should
wrong.
It's
We'll
only a
start again. It
digit.
was 13,000. 13,000 people live there.
It's only one
Uh,
zero. It doesn't really make much
yeah. That's what I meant. That's what I meant. Look, I was like looking at something. As long as it's got a Coles or a Woolies, I'll be all right.
Yeah,
I can
there you
work
go.
everything else out.
There you go.
But no, there's
Is
enough
there
there.
anything? Is there anything that would make you consider moving back?
No, I couldn't. I couldn't go back now.
Such a convincing no.
I know, and I don't know if that's like really harsh on, you know, what the UK, but I loved, you know, it's where I'm from. It's where, you know, I lived for 33 years, but I just don't feel like it's got enough anymore. There isn't enough. It doesn't offer enough. And I think what people don't really realize there is that the middle earners especially are just taxed for everything they have there. They're not looked after. They struggle to get the right childcare so they can go to work there. Whereas here, the middle earners, I find, are really well looked after by the government. You know, you do pay a slightly higher rate of tax here compared to back in the UK, but for what you get back from that is massive, and it's actually not comparable really, and it kind of makes you think why aren't we looked after that well in the UK, you know?
Yeah.
You
You were
know.
talking earlier about like having when you move over here, you have to kind of reset that savings pot, if you like.
Yeah.
But I find that one of the biggest differences, I never used to be able to save
I didn't,
in the
yeah,
UK.
I don't know why I
I mean,
said that
I
because we had
could.
no savings.
Yeah. I'd say, oh, I want a new telly or whatever, and
Yeah.
I'd save for that. But
Yeah.
I never had enough spare
No,
cash lying
there wasn't.
around
No,
to specifically say I'm going to put some money. Now
no.
I even
Yeah.
try and look at what investments are
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I should be
Yeah.
thinking
Got to put a
maybe.
little bit extra.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it's a bit like, you know, we're getting older and you kind of have to start thinking about your future. Or even though, you know, our superannuations are mostly paid for by our employers anyway, rather than the other way
Which is
around.
massive.
But I'm sat
Yeah.
there, I'm like, oh, what would happen if
Yeah.
what's an index fund?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it took 36 years of my life to be able to
Yeah.
Google it up. I was like, because I'd never had any money for it.
No.
So
Well, that's
I
it.
think,
And it comes back around to that, doesn't it? Around like how much better off you are here compared to the UK. You know, we were just constantly making ends meet before. Yeah, we like the savings were really difficult, to be honest, in the UK. And we were fortunate that we did have a little bit of money left over from doing the renovation and stuff that we could sort of use to start the journey to come here. But then that ran out, you know, it all runs out eventually, and then you've got to start again from somewhere. So, you know, when we thought we'd be able to buy the cars when we got here because the house would sell and it'll be fine, we're still hiring a car. You know, we're on a long-term rental. It's not even like a proper lease, it's just a rental. And now we've had to look at, you know, what loan options there are to now buy the car, which we didn't initially factor in because we thought we'd just be able to buy it from selling the house. So there's all these little things that, you know, sort of you consider going later down the line. But I think going back to the superannuation, having that extra, 11, 12, 13% every month that you didn't have in the UK, that's your new
Yeah.
savings pot, that you didn't have access to before.
Yeah.
And I know, especially with police officers coming over, especially ones with a decent amount of service, they might be on the old pension scheme, which was very good. But those of us who are younger in service, the pension wasn't that great. So to be able to start again here on a super fund, I think is going to be a good option for us in the long term anyway.
I want to share a mistake because I'm going to ask you about if there's been any mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I first moved over here was to do with superannuation, and I put the wrong tax file number in on it.
Right.
So I actually lost out on about 2.5 grand's worth of
Oh,
tax on my
yeah.
superannuation because they were like, "Oh, your tax file number's wrong," and I think I must have got an email or something,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
just went, "Man, I'm not going to pay attention to that," until it realised at the end of the year when they gave the statement through, I was like, what was that? And obviously, I then gave my tax file number. There's one mistake for anyone listening: make sure you do the right numbers. What's the biggest mistake you've made since moving here? That you're aware of, because I wasn't aware of
Yeah,
this.
so I might not know
tax file
yet.
number thing.
I might not
You
know.
might have to check your numbers tomorrow.
I know. I don't know. I honestly, the only thing that always plays on my mind is how I got the house sale so wrong. It always comes back to that. I'm thinking that I'd have it would just be sorted, and then it wasn't, and that took a lot of back and forward. In terms of, mistakes here, I don't know. I don't know if I've made any yet. My husband might text me in a minute and say like, "No, you've done this," actually. But I don't know. I think in general it's probably pretty smooth sailing for us. We were probably quite fortunate. We had the hiccup with the house, but overall, we've just managed to make it work. And I think if you come with the right mindset and you really want to be here, you'll be able to manage those little hurdles no matter what pops up, because something will pop up. But you wake up and you look at the sunrise every day and you're like, oh yeah, no, it's all right because I'm here now. Or you drive down the coast road and you're like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good view. It's all right. Today's all right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Not as bad as it could be.
No, yeah.
What advice then do you have for people that are looking to move to Australia, either specifically for police officers or just in general, or even just specifically for Perth? Because I rag on that so much sometimes.
I know you do rag on Perth. I think it's great. So my husband, he's done a lot of the East Coast. I personally haven't done much of the East Coast, but the first time I brought him to Perth, he was like, "Oh yeah, no, I could live here," and he's done the East Coast. So that was I thought, oh, well, if he's saying that, then it must be all right. But no, I think Perth's got a really good mix. I think so. I actually spend a lot of time in the city. I really like the city, but then I love that 25 minutes on the train, I'm back in the northern suburbs and I'm by some of the most beautiful beaches that I have ever seen, and they're never busy. That's another thing. You go to the beach in the UK on that one hot day and you can't move, but here you can go to the beach on a Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter, and it won't be packed. It will never be packed. And the Indian Ocean is incredible. It is crystal blue waters and white sands.
At least you can see the sharks then.
You can see the sharks.
Every time I see
the
a really big shark, it's over in Exmouth. That seems to be one of the places.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, up north. Yeah, they'll get it.
Man's out fishing and there's a 7
5 meter
great white shark.
Yeah. I don't go in the sea that often, just in case.
Yeah,
but,
don't go that deep anyway.
No, my advice would be that if you're even thinking about it or you've got that inkling, worst case, just stick an application in. Because you stick an application in and you keep getting, especially with the police application, there's loads of different stages. So it's not like you put your application in and you've got a job tomorrow. Our process actually took 18 months from start to finish. So that's probably something to consider. I don't think everyone's is 18 months. I was pregnant in between that, so that held mine up a little bit through some stages. But I think you're looking at 12 to 18 months specifically for that process. For other people with trades or on different visas, I think that's probably about the standard timeline anyway for most people. So sort of factor that into, where do you see yourself in 18 months? When do you think you'd sell your house in that time? But a lot of people talk about coming over to visit first, but that's quite a big financial, if you're paying 5 to 10 grand to come out to visit first, to then come back and be like, oh yeah, I do like it, so let's go. And then you've got to pay your flights again. It's another 5 grand for your flights for a family of 4 or whatever. So I think, reaching out to people who are already here is a big thing, because people will tell you, that people will be quite honest and say, I like this, but I don't like that. Or I'm finding this difficult, but in the long run, I think this is going to be great. And I think it's really important if you can reach out and speak to people, and not just one person, reach out to a few, because there's a lot on social media now. You just type in moving to Perth, or I I don't know, moving to Australia, and you'll find people in the same sort of position and the same boat giving out their experiences of what they've had while they've been here. And everyone will have a different experience. I've seen some people just this week say how homesick they are and that they're really struggling with that.
It's this time of year that kind of gets a lot of people. Weirdly, some people just love Halloween.
Oh, do you know what? I saw like on socials from people back home, I saw a pumpkin. I was like, oh yeah, it's that time of year. Like I had completely forgotten that it's now autumn back home, and I'd be normally pumpkin picking, and it just hasn't even crossed my mind here at the minute, because that would take some adjustment as well. Christmas in like 35-40 degree heat, that would be different. But no, I would tell anybody to do it, and if anybody wanted to reach out and ask me anything to do with the move, then my inbox is always open as well.
Awesome.
But just do it.
Thanks, Nell, for sharing your journey, and I hope it's given you all a greater insight in what it's like to move to Australia as a police officer. And if you live in Perth too and you want to find out more about Nell's meetups, I'm sure she's going to come up with a better name. I'll put a link to her socials down in the description below. And if you want to see more of what our life is like moving to Australia and living here now for 4 years, then check out our channel on YouTube or Instagram at That Johnston Life. And if you're in the early stages of moving over here and you're not sure what to do next, make sure to speak to our friends True Blue Migration Services. Speak to them today and use their free visa assessment service, and they'll be able to tell you exactly what you need to do to make this beautiful country your home. Follow the hundreds of positive reviews on Google and go one stage further, because this weirdo that makes videos on YouTube can also save you an extra $200 off the cost of your visa. So make sure to mention us when you speak to them, and I'll see you next time.